and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sathology Debunking Mythology. Sat means truth, Logos means a study or a science. Sathology means the science of truth or study of truth, and the true antonym is mythology, which means a study of fake, lie, or imagination, or a science of fake, lie, imagination. The word mythology was especially coined against the Vedic education, Vedic scriptures, and especially against the Hindu culture by the British, who I also call them faith based colonizers, because their main motive of colonization was to civilize the Indians as per their thought. And so, therefore, they were the British agents, British intelligence agents were appointed, Max Muller and Macaulay later on, to appointed to change or translate the Vedic history in a language wherein they introduced parts of their own faith, Christianity, into those translations. And till date, the confusion is going on. But luckily, the traditions of India rejected them. And just imagine, just to let you know, I also belong to a tradition, Brahma Madhva Sampradaya. And therefore, my gurus and my tradition, they never accepted those books. And we all had an alternate version. That's how the Indian culture was saved. Most of the Indians also don't know that the tradition saved. And because in the Bollywood media, which was captured later on by the same people, faith-based colonizers, they started making mockery of these characters of Indian scriptures, like Narada. Biggest mockery was made of Narada and Yudhishthir, because if you attack them, you actually question the very essence of dharma. And dharma is also taken from the Vedic scriptures into Buddhism. Dharma is not a Buddhist word, like most of you are taught in American universities. Now, the same education is being taught to Americans and many people in the West. So, through Sathology, we question that. And our goal is to establish the truth, but nothing but truth. So, therefore, we have so many guests who come and share their wisdom with us. Today, we have a very, very special guest, and he has come on the show many, many times. And he is exactly going to do that. Very carefully, he has chosen a topic: ancient Indian education system. So, without delay, let us welcome Sri Prashant Pol.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. So, it's a relief now that all of us are now talking about this in the public domain now, and
Yes.
and also it's a good beginning also, and especially people like you who are actually doing a lot of research and presenting it for people. So so one thing I can say before we start off on this topic and you speak is that three things were free in the even the earlier British system. It is recorded by the British also. One was education, second was food, and third was medical help. And all three were given from the temples. Temples were not just places of worship; they were also places for social service in the Indian context. So the temples were naturally made huge. Even today, if you go to Jagannath Puri Temple, which is my favorite temple in India, there is a whole market which makes food or sells food for the whole city at a cost which is unthinkable, low, so low. It's like in for an American dollar, in 50 cents, you can have two times of meal or three times of meal, a meal in American context. So these three things were free. So now, when it comes to Indian education system, first of all, what has changed and what was the Indian education system? Please share.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Aditya. Uh, to talk up, to talk on the Indian education system, I would like to quote Professor Angus Maddison once again. We all are aware that Angus Maddison was basically the great economist who is recognized worldwide. He wrote few books like The Ancient History of Economics and like that, so many books. But therein, why I would like to mention him, that therein he has mentioned that in the first century, the Indian share in the world economics or world market was one third, around 33%, he has mentioned. And to support that, he has given certain figures. And then he also mentioned that during the 10th and 11th century, this share was up to 30%. This means that 1000 year and even after that, India was having around one third of the world market, world economy. Naturally, any country which is basically having so much of business, so much of economy, so much of market worldwide must be having some knowledge. And that's basically the key wherein it says, it shows that India had a very rich education system. But unfortunately, after the British rule, it was portrayed that Indians didn't have the knowledge. That's what Aditya Ji has mentioned about the Macaulay, who has said that we are here to educate you. And that's what unfortunate part of it. But India, as I said, that has a very rich system, culture of education, because knowledge was the strength of India. And due to knowledge only, Indians have gone to many places, from Purushpur, that is today's Peshawar in Pakistan, to Papua New Guinea. This entire part of Asia was under Indians, and India never invaded any country. They didn't try to conquer any country. It was a knowledge basis on which they have basically gone to so many places. Now, for the knowledge, Indians have a very structured system. The first university of the world, when the rest of the world was not aware about the education system in that manner, Indians had the first university of the world that was known. Prior to that, probably some other university might be there. We're not aware. But what with the historical proof, what we get is Takshashila, which is today in Pakistan, was the first known Indian university, which was really very huge. That was around 6th to 7th century before Christ. So around 2600 to 2700 years back, we had a very structured way of education. And this university was teaching so many topics, so many subjects. When people were not aware about the medicine, how the medical system works, there was a complete department of medicine. So medicine or health education started from Takshila. Even prior to that, some university might be there, but we are not aware about it in Indian context. And in those days, all the students worldwide used to come to India. There's no question that Indian students used to go to somewhere else, because the best knowledge, best universities were available only in India. And this, as I said, that there was a total system. Many people have thought about, I have said about this system. They mentioned about this system. Amir Khusro is a very well-known Qawwali singer. In a Muslim, they have the tradition, they have Qawwali. So Amir Khusro is basically known for his poetry. He was basically a poet. Amir Khusro's tenure is in the 13th, 14th century, 1252 to 1325. That was his period, his duration. He had visited India in the early 14th century, very early 14th century. When he had visited, during that time or prior to that, Muslims invader had already invaded India, most part of the India. They have destroyed the entire Indian education system. They have destroyed the big universities like Nalanda, Uddanpur, Vikramshila, and so many. So naturally, the core strength of the Indian knowledge or Indian education system was not there. But still, whatever remains were there, Amir Khusro was very well impressed, and he has written very high about the Indian education system. Harun al-Rashid is basically known for his different stories, tales, fairy tales kind of things in Baghdad. And that time, Al-Mansur was a Arab Sultan, Arab king, Arab Sultan from Baghdad. They have sent few persons to India to get the best and brighter Indian students, so that they can manage the administration and systems in Baghdad. This was the first international campus interview which is known around 1200 years back, and it was written. So this entire education, the way it was structured, was long back. It is said that proper curriculum was there, proper methodology was there, that how the knowledge was to be delivered, and it was properly well written, well maintained, and well managed. Panini, who was the great person who has written the grammar for Sanskrit language, is known for that, around 600 years before the Christ. So Panini has talked about the girls' education in the then India, 2600 years back. And India was very rich in giving the knowledge or education to girls and women. It was documented everywhere. Panini has mentioned that for girls, the university used to have the girls' hostel. And Panini used the word Chhatri Shala for those girls' hostel in the universities. The girls who used to get the elementary knowledge, they used to call Rushika. So any girl who is Rushika is supposed to have the elementary knowledge or elementary education. And the girls or women who used to get the higher education, they used to be called Brahmavadini. And like Rigveda, which is very old, one of the oldest book in the world, they generally call it, around 5,000, 6,000 years or 7,000 years old. That Rigveda mentioned various names of the Brahmavadini during those days. This means that in India, girls or women used to get the education in all sorts of, all sorts of faculties. In the Upanishada, they used to mention the Gargi, Maitreyi, and all, so many Vidushi. Vidushi is basically like Brahmavadini, who are very knowledgeable women, knowledgeable persons. For teachers, the Sanskrit name for the teachers were Acharya, Guru, Upadhyaya, Charaka, Yojana Satika, Shikshak, and like that. And like we have today, the various functions during the entire our education session, in those days also they used to have that. The opening of any education session, they used to call it, for that Satrarambha, they used to call it Upakaranamana. So Upakaranamana was name of the function which was held at the time of starting of any new session for the students. And for end of the session, when the session used to end after a year, then that function, again a function used to be held, and that function used to called Utsarga. So Upakaranaman for the beginning, Utsarga for the end. And there used to be a great and huge graduation ceremony, exactly or similar way like we do have today. And that ceremony of graduation ceremony used to be called Samavartana. A lot of places you will find that mention of Samavartana. So if a student has got, participated in the Samavartana, he used to supposed to get the graduation degree, he got graduated, sort of that. Then there were the holidays, naturally, like we have Sunday and some other holidays like that. So the holidays used to be called Anadhyaya. So Anadhyaya days, Anadhyaya means the day when there is no Adhyayana. Adhyayan means, study. So when there is no study or no Adhyayan, this means that Anadhyaya, so Anadhyaya days. And for the Anadhyaya, the Indians had the calendar, and that calendar was very well, probably structured. So the full moon, that is Purnima, used to call in Sanskrit, that Purnima was an Anadhyaya day. The no moon, that is Amavasya, also used to be an Anadhyaya day. And like that, in a month like Shravana, there are some Anadhyaya, and like that. So they have entire structure, entire system. Surprisingly, many countries in Southeast Asia, including Laos, including Vietnam, including Cambodia, till very recently, they used to have the structure like this. That the holidays were in, Amavasya, Purnima, and the calendar is also like that. So they used to follow even very recently. And as I said, that there are a lot of universities used to be there in India. Takshashila, as I said, that was the first university in the world which is known. And that was started in the 6th or 7th century before the Christ. And it went on till the 5th century, till the time the Huns, which are basically from the northern part of today's Pakistan and Afghanistan. So even northern to the Afghanistan, northwest area of the Afghanistan, those have attacked India. They were called Hun, and because of that, this Nalanda, this Takshashila University, which was the very first university, this Takshashila couldn't really function. So from 6th or 7th century before the Christ to the 4th or 5th century, to 5th century to be precise, in the year 455 AD, this university was ceased to work, sort of. Surprisingly, during the time, Yuan Sang had visited this place, and he has written a lot about the great education system, about Takshashila. In a Buddha literature, there are a lot of Jatak kathas are there, Jatak stories. They used to call it Jatak stories, like Sumi Jataka, Tailapatta, etc., etc. They all mention about this Takshila University and how great it is, how a lot of inventions used to be there in the this university and all. That all are basically mentioned in this Jataka stories, Jatak kathas, and there are a lot of great alumni are there from this Takshila University. The great Chanakya, who was supposed to be the great thinker, who had, who was basically the main behind uniting the entire India. So this Chanakya, then Chandragupta, who started the Chandragupta Maurya dynasty, then Charaka, who is supposed to be one of the founders of one of the great persons of Ayurveda, then Panini, I just mentioned, who wrote the grammar of Sanskrit. Like that, there's so many great students came out from this university, which was from, as I said, from 7th century before the Christ to the 5th century, around 1200 years, around 1100 to 1200 years, this university was there, and uh, who has basically given a lot of great students who run the entire country and who had shown their excellence in various fields of knowledge. It was so coincidence that when this university was somehow got not functioning due to that attacks from west, northwest provinces, exactly that time, in the today's state called Bihar in India, which is basically eastern side of the state, therein, you earlier that used to be called Magadha Empire. That Magadha Empire had started this Nalanda University, and again Nalanda became the great and one of the largest universities in the world. This Nalanda University was from 415 AD, 415 to 1197. In the year 1197, a Muslim invader called Bakhtiyar Khilji had invaded, had come to this place and very brutally destroyed the entire university. I'll come after that on this topic. But this university, around again, this university was around 700, 800 years, was there, 700 years there. and it did very well. It did great. And I said that there are a lot of students worldwide used to come to this university. A lot of Chinese students have came there as well, and they studied a lot. Yuan Sang was there for 10 years. His guru there was Sheila Bhadra. He has written about Sheila Bhadra. Yuan Sang has wrote a lot about the university, the campus, the library, the academic calendar, and lot many things he has written. But to get the exact information about this university, to get the exact information about how this university really was working, how rich the library or the books in this university, we could get a very strong proof. An Indian author, his name was Rahul Sanskrutyayan. His Rahul Sanskrutyayan was a research scholar. He was a writer, research scholar. He used to write the travelogues. He used to travel a lot. And his passion was to research on the Buddhist literature, Buddhist knowledge. And to get the Buddhist literature, Buddhist knowledge, he visited a lot in Tibet and Sri Lanka. So he visited Tibet so many times that he has got almost a free hand or free permission to visit any mutt and to meet any monk, visit any mutt and get access to any book, any grantha which he could get, any manuscript which he could get. So he used this facility, studied a lot, wrote a lot as well. Therein he got a book, a sort of travelogue sort of book, we can call it a grantha. And that grantha was written by a Tibeti monk. They call it Tibeti bhikkhu in a Buddhist religion. So Tibeti monk, his name was Dharmaswami. Original name was Chaglotsawa. Chaglotsawa was the original name, but after he became monk, his name was Dharmaswami. Basically his time is 1197 exactly, when Bakhtiyar Khilji had destroyed this Nalanda University. That is his birth year. And so 1997 to 1264, his person was there. He visited this Nalanda University. Therein some remains were there of this at the time the very rich Nalanda University. Some remains were there. So he visited there in 1230. 1997 it was destroyed. 1230. This means after 33 years he was there. He found some remains. He could talk to the people who had seen the university, who worked in the university, and some of them were the students of the university when the university was running at a full fledged, full manner, full strength. And more than 10,000 students used to be there. More than 2,000 teachers used to be there. So he wrote a lot about this. And his teacher, he has also mentioned about his teacher. His teacher was Rahul Shribhadra. Rahul Shribhadra was his teacher when he went there. And only 70 students used to be there because the great university was not there. But still, someone was trying to run that show. And only with the 70 students, Rahul Shribhadra used to teach the students there. And then he has mentioned about, after getting the information from various people, various sources, then he has drawn a picture sort of in his words about the great Nalanda University. He said that he talked a lot about the books which are there in the Nalanda. And he said he is writing in 1230, in the year 1230. And he says that this university used to have very old books. Old books means how old? more than 1000, 1500 years old than that. This means that such old books to be written, which were written on the Tadapatri and other, different kind of this thing. Those books were there, and a huge number of books used to be there. That was a real knowledge system of India. There was real knowledge of the entire Asia, rather. And the library used to have 9 floors. This library's name was basically the administration department name was Mana Mandir, and the library's name used to call Dharma Ganga. And in the Dharma Ganga, there used to be 3 blocks. They used to call Ratna Sagara, Ratnodadhi, and Ratna Ranjaka. These are names of 3 blocks. One of the block was 9 floor high, and all blocks used to have full of books, grantha, knowledge. Unfortunately, 1197, in the year 1197, when Bakhtiyar Khilji came there, Bakhtiyar Khilji didn't have any knowledge system. He didn't know about knowledge. He didn't know about education. He was not educated at all. These were the invaders who really didn't have the the knowledge background, educational background. They didn't have that. He didn't understand the wealth of this knowledge, and he very brutally destroyed all these books. This Changlo Sawad or this Dharmaswamy has written that 3 months the books they used to burn. Every day morning they used to try to collect the books. Till the evening they used to get the books and were burning. Only night they used to stop. Like the 3 months they burned the book. Such a huge storage of the books was there. Such a huge collection of the books was there. Such a huge collection of the knowledge was there. Unfortunately, that was destroyed. But at the same time, there are other universities also. We talk a lot about the Takshashila University. We talk a lot about the Nalanda University. But India was such a huge country. The universities were not only these two. There were so many. I could name few. But in addition to that, the education system was so designed that till the boy was when the boy used to up to get 8 years of his age, even boy or girl, till the year 8, he used to get the education at his home. So the home education system was there, or in some cases, a very nearby this temples or mutt used to teach this student. After 8th, when he completes his 8th year, he used to be sent to Gurukula. The Gurukul could be a mandir, a temple, a mutt, like that. And therein he used to study up to 8 years or 12 years. And then, if he wants to have the higher education, he could go to the universities, and these universities were there across the length and breadth of this country, everywhere. Like this, as I said, that Takshashila and Nalanda, there was a Vikramshila University in Bihar. In this Bihar and Bengal, those days, Pal dynasty used to rule. They were the rulers of this entire area. Today's eastern part of India, that is Bihar, Bengal, etc. So this Raja, the King Dharampal, he had started or created this Vikramshila University in the year 800. So again, it was 800 to 1197 because Bakhtiyar Khilji has destroyed this university in the same year when he destroyed this Nalanda. It is near the place called Bhagalpur in Bihar. So this university was up to around, say, I can say about 400 years. Then there was another university that was called Uddayantapur. This Uddayantapur was again established by Pal dynasty, and King Gopala has started this again in Bihar. This also around 400 years this university worked. It was known for its again it was very large university. They said that 12,000 students were used to study at a time. That's such a huge 400 years it could function, and many people have written about it. Acharya Sri Ganga was one of his very well known teacher, professor, you may call it, and many students of his Acharya Sri Ganga has written about this about his capabilities as a teacher. Then in Karnataka, which is basically, I can say, the southern or southern west part of India, Karnataka is a state. Therein, a place called Vijapur. In this Vijapur, there used to be a university called Sulotagi. This Sulotagi University was one of the very well-known place to understand and to learn Sanskrit language. And as I said, that the entire knowledge, most of knowledge was in Sanskrit. So naturally, students from all over the world used to come to this place also to learn the Sanskrit. And under this Sulotagi University, there was a college, sort of college, because it's still structure. One university had some colleges also. So one college name was Pavittage. This Pavittage was relatively small college, but it was a Sanskrit college, Sanskrit school. It was very well known. And this university, Sulotagi, was established by Rashtrakuta dynasty. And a person called Narayana, who was a secretary to the king, King Krishna III. Krishna III from the Rashtrakuta dynasty. He basically established, he put all his wealth there to create a university. I mean, those were the rulers in those days who understand the importance of knowledge. So in India, in those days, before the invaders used to come to India, knowledge was the major wealth for every Indian. And every Indian somehow wanted to have excel into one or the other profession, and that's why he or she used to be after that knowledge. Then Vallabhi was another university. It is in Gujarat, which is the western part of India, central western part of India, we can say. So it is in the west part of India. It is in Saurashtra, part of Gujarat. This Vallabhi University was, started around 600 AD, and it worked again for was functional for 600 years. As I said that during 1200 AD, I mean from 1197 to 1200, in those 2-3 years, these Muslim invaders have literally destroyed most of the higher education institutions of India. All these universities were destroyed during that period only. And this Vallabhi University, they used to call it because it was contemporary to the Nalanda, and many people said that it was that was a rivalry between these two universities in a good sense, in a nice sense, that in terms of knowledge, in terms of new inventions, both university have a competition sort of. Vallabhi here, and so western part is Vallabhi, and eastern part was Nalanda. That's how in India the universities used to function. The courses which Vallabhi University used to teach, very interesting: political science, law, economics, business management, agricultural management, administration, they call it business administration, agriculture administration, theology, accountancy, and like that. And it is mentioned that the student who used to passed out, graduated from this kind of various streams, they used to get a very good job with various kings across the country to administer the various functions. So in the administration, they used to get a very good job. So Again, campus interview and all those things were there, and it is very old tradition in India. Then Sompura, again in Bengal, was another very large, one of the very large university. It was functional for 400 years, from 8th century to almost end of the 12th century. And again, it was started by the Pal dynasty. Pal dynasty, very large, various different sections of the Pal dynasty were there, and it used to give the religious knowledge also, Sanatana Dharma, Buddha Dharma, Jaina Dharma, like that. But at the same time, it also used to give the latest knowledge. So the religious knowledge as well as the professional knowledge, we can say. Then there was another university called Jagat Dala, again very famous. Today it is, the place is in Bangladesh. It's not in India. It's in Bangladesh, and this was again by Pal dynasty, and it could function only for 200 years. Around 10th century it started, and 12th century end it basically destroyed by the invaders. Then in Orissa, that's again the eastern part of India, Orissa, a place called Katak. Just now, Aditya ji has mentioned about the great temple of Jagannath Puri. Katak is very near to that. So in the Katak, there was a university called Pushpagiri. It is in Orissa, Odisha. So it is called Odisha state. Pushpagiri University was there, again known for its various professional courses, professional knowledge. Then again in Odisha, there used to be another university called Ratnagiri and all. So I could name many. I just want to emphasize here that during that period, up to 12th or 13th century, India had a very well structured education system. And the education system was in such a manner that every person used to get the knowledge in his or her profession. If the persons are staying in the coastal area, then shipbuilding is one of the major professions. So they used to get in the shipbuilding profession, so they used to get the education in the shipbuilding by itself. And more important is, which is not very emphasized, is that the precision was one of the major factor which was taught to the Indian students very rigorously. That in a knowledge, in any profession you go, you have to be very precise in nature. You have to have the precision. And that's why we find many examples, which are now we could see are the temples, the old construction, the architecture. And we will find the excellent way of precision is there. And that is amazing. We cannot imagine that how this precision they could have. And that's because of this education system. Again and again, it was hammered on them that yes, you have to have the precision, precise in your life. And that's basically how the education system was there. But in addition to that, as I said that, Kachi University was there in the today's Tamil Nadu state was there. Then Kashi, Varanasi, Kashi was another religious place. At the same time, it was a place of education, place of knowledge. And Kashi University was there from since long. It was very well known. Then there was a Nagarjuna Konda University in Andhra Pradesh, southern state of India. Then there was another very famous University of Sharda Peeth, which is in Kashmir, the northeast part of India. Basically, it shows that from north to south and east to west, all states, all provinces, the education structure, system, universities, higher education was there. And moreover, these universities or higher education institutes were run by or patronate by the local kings, the local traders, local businessmen, local rich people, large farmers. They used to give enough money so that the educational institution should run properly. It was very decentralized sort of structure or system which India used to have. And one more point I would like to highlight, that this era, that is around some uh, uh, around 200 300 years before the Christ, to around say 12th or 13th century, around 1000, I mean 1400 to 1500 years span, this entire region of Asia, which I just mentioned, that is from this Purushpur, that is Peshawar, which is in today's Pakistan, that too up to Papua New Guinea. That entire region used to speak one language, that is Sanskrit. They understand one language, that is Sanskrit. And till 17th century or 18th century, when Britishers started making their own colonies in various parts of the world, till that time, there was not a single language which could be understood by such a large number of people and such a large geography worldwide. The only language, and that too also around 1500 years back, one language which basically tried to make a connect between all these people, and therefore understanding from one person to another person, transfer of technology, transfer of knowledge from one place to another place, from one university to another university, even up to places like Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand, etc. It was not very difficult. It was very simple because the common language was there for the understanding, for speaking, etc. So Sanskrit was not only a language of administration, it was there for the administration, but Sanskrit was a language of a general people speaking language. General people used to speak in Sanskrit in those days. And that was one of the beauty. That's how the entire part was got having a connect with each other. And during the time, this Gita, Mahabharata, Ramayana, Veda, Upanishada, Bhagavad Gita, all these grantha used to get recited from the entire region. Today, when we talk about it, it looks like as a fairy tale someone is telling. It's imaginary. No, it was not imaginary. It's all real. The entire education system was real. All the Sanskrit speaking and all, everything is real because we have all the solid concrete proof for that. But unfortunately, as I said, that topic is today how this education system was destroyed by the invaders. So, as I said, that Bakhtiyar Khilji was one of the person who very brutally had destroyed a lot of universities. He burnt a lot of books, grantha, which had a huge sort of knowledge, which we can't today get it. And not only one, he destroyed so many. At the same time, it was not only the very large higher education institutions were there. There were a lot of other matha were there. A lot of temples were there. Temples were also a place for education, as Aditya ji just mentioned in the beginning. Yes, temples were there for that. That's why very huge temple structures used to be there, and they basically arranged the education, deliveries to the various students. Even that system was destroyed by these invaders. So, when the Britishers entered into this picture, when the Britishers started to make India as a colony, till that time, though the higher education systems, the higher educational institutions, universities were destroyed totally, but education system as such was not totally gone. Higher education was almost not there the way it was supposed to be earlier. But the basic elementary education was anyway there. Even up to a certain extent, the higher education was also there. Because in between, there was a Vijayanagara empire in southern part of the country. Then Maratha Empire was also there for some time. During that period, some sort of education was there, though again I said the great universities couldn't get rebuilt again. And when Britishers came to India, 16,008 was the year when 1608 was the year when Britishers came to India. And after that, they started making this India as their colony. 1757 was the year when Indian lost the Battle of Plassey. It was a very well-known battle because from there, Britishers started to have holding from the Bengal state and to the India. So till 1911, the capital of India was Calcutta, Kolkata in these days, and that was Britishers' capital of entire India. The great India. So when Britishers came to India, Britishers thought that India is basically didn't have any education system, and they tried to impose their own way of education system. But that is not the case. Scenario was different, and many Britishers themselves have written about it that yes, India, even that time, even after Muslim invaders have tried to destroy the education places, schools, colleges, universities of India, still there was some kind of system was there. British writers themselves have written, but we talk about that in the second part when we discuss about how Britishers have destroyed the Indian education system.
You
Yes, sir.
gave a you gave a big summary on everything, and I will ask the viewers to first research it also, because the reason is we are not blind believers or followers of any truth. Sri Prashant Polji has researched it and given you the knowledge, but if you can get more details and get references, it will make your faith stronger in what we are saying. And generally, the point is that history teaches us how to act in the present. Like that's why Ramayana is documented, and that's why Mahabharata is documented, so that we can use that information for today's life. And for that reason, I consider history, even though I'm an engineer by education, but I consider history as the most important topic every man, every human should learn, because if you do not learn it, then the history repeats itself, and that time if you are not prepared, then again you'll make the same mistakes. Like one very common thing I was being told, that 1947 India got independence, but I say that in the mind they were never dependent in the first place, because that's why they fought for it. So again the history repeats itself. In fact, the Mahabharata teaches us how to fight against adharma constantly. That's what Ramayana teaches us. And second, and most important thing is, we are neither violent nor non-violent. We can be the most violent because sometimes the violence is needed to protect dharma. At the same time, we can be the most non-violent when it is not needed. So thank you, Prashantji. What a wonderful presentation. And we'll definitely cover the second part in much more detail. And so thank you all. Namaskar.